Yorapapapatarondo. Yorororororototorondo. Yororororototorondo. Yorororo. Yotototo. Yorororo. Yorororo. Yo. Bum bum. Yo dum ba dum ba 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 bum bum. Yo dum bum ba 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 bum bum ba 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 bum bum bum. Bum ba 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 dum ba. Yo dum bum ba 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 ba. Yo dum 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 bum bum. Yo don't know, yo don't know, yo don't know, yo don't know. Pink Floyd is the highest level of jam band. I use them to cure my years of crippling insomnia. My buddy Jot introduced me to them, and it really, really helped. You know, I don't really care much about the politics of the situation. I think it's really suspicious and strange what happened to Sid Barrett. But in general, just I like the quality of their music, and so did my late Uncle Bob. He liked Pink Floyd a lot. Rest in peace. He was a great man. He was a great man. Just wish I got to know him better. He died when I was young. It is what it is, you know. It took a lot out of the family. He was like a support beam. He was like a pillar of structure in the family, and a lot of stuff started to dissolve after that. But we would continue to care for my grandfather well into my teens, and that event took a lot out of him more than basically anybody else. You know, it is what it is. We have to adhere to genuine, non-counterfeit, non-artificial, not feel-good, you know, puppies, kitties, and rainbows religion, but the real memento mori, you know, here's a skull, sort of religious sentiments that have always been patterned into our ancestry. And we have to do it the right way. We can't just do it in a morbid way. We have to do it in the correct way. Looks like XQC's hairline is receding pretty fast, and if I was to guess, it's probably because of the harsh chemicals he uses on it to make it pretty colors, you know, and stand up and all that, and that just... I haven't even gone to a barber in a long time, you know. I've gone to a barber once in the last, like, 6 years, and that's that, you know. I don't need it much. I didn't know this until recently, and I don't like talking about this stuff, but apparently Hassan Piker is slightly cross-eyed. I never noticed that before, but I've never watched that pompous champagne socialist annoying roach before. He also looks absolutely awful compared to the snapshots that I remember seeing of him recently. Like, his skin looks terrible, his hairline's receding, and, you know, that happens too. Happens to the best of us, but, like, everybody is, like, the zeitgeist around Hassan Piker is that he is, like, simultaneously a model and a political activist. But just recently, just by going out and doing anything in the real world, his model affect has dropped. Like, he is, you know, champagne socialist at the end of the day, and it's very ironic. It's the same as Karl Marx himself. Like, he lived in, if I'm not mistaken, Trier, which is a beautiful, rich in Catholicism, gorgeous. He had a big home, even though his family was Jewish. He was an atheist in public, because there's always some form of a hidden benefactor in a lot of communist systems where some places don't seem to get touched, and some people seem to end up coming out the other side of communism extremely well off. And I think that's the big issue with Putin's Russia on the world stage, is that it's not like the oligarchs falling out of windows thing. That's that's something to look at. I'm not saying Putin's perfect. I'd have to be a crazy person to think that. But I'm more on board with like kind of the Tucker level of respect and insight, and I'm not just gonna like paste over my criticism of Ukraine and what I know about Ukraine, and neither am I going to paste over my criticism of the Russian government and Russia itself. I'm going to hit it with a observed, metered viewpoint about the situation, because it's two huge land masses, large groups of people, complex ethnic tension, and a lot of government chicanery, especially on the Ukraine side. And we'll get into that later in the episode, so stay tuned. But yeah, Hassan Piker, he's aging like milk. Check it out, I made myself strawberry milk. Freeze-dried strawberries, and some good grass-fed, no chemical, organic Valley milk. Good stuff. The one issue compared to using the nasty food dye filled high fructose corn syrup compared to using this freeze-dried organic strawberries is that the powder sometimes doesn't always dissolve. Now, what you do is you heat up a small amount of milk for like 2 minutes until it's steaming hot, and then you put the powder in there after kind of chopping it up so that it gets the clumps out. You put the powder in there, you stir it very violently, and then you put the rest of your milk in, and then it's a perfect temperature to drink, and it's way more dissolved than if you try and dissolve it in a large portion of milk that just moves it around and usually doesn't get hot enough. Cheers. Cheers, biggies. Steal a Lennyism right there, although that's probably just a Northumberland colloquialism. Vernacular. Oh. But yeah. He's aging like milk. Zombiker. I had to check out the content comp because nobody will shut up about it. And then look into H3H3's responses because nobody will shut up about it. And I've seen a lot of internet feuds before. It gives me no pleasure to say this. It gives me no pleasure at all to say this. But iDubbbz won. And here's why. That content comp was a decisive blow that got 6 million views in less than a week. Decisive blow. And H3H3 has released multiple videos, none getting more than 1.3 million, likely of the exact same people watching different videos. And iDubbbz not responding to any of them, if he continues to do so, will actually look better on his end than like the guy flipping out, which is exactly what, like, they know that that's what you... H3H3's team knows that iDubbbz released that specifically to make him crash out. And it's a very difficult time for Ethan and Gila because their Teddy Fresh company relies on a tremendous amount of Chinese textiles. If you don't know, you probably do know. Chinese tariffs weren't paused. So their entire company is in like, it's in red alert mode. So that's stressing him out. And I will say if iDubbbz, God, I hate talking about it. I will say if iDubbbz reported H3H3's kids to DHS, HHS, not DHS, Human Health Services, or CPS, Child Protective Services, that's scummy, but there's no evidence of that happening. Which could happen, but there's no evidence of it happening. So you got to have pics, or the assumption is that pics or it didn't happen. You need physical evidence. This is a legal argument. This is why, unfortunately, one of the worst legal arguments is, are you a doctor? No, then you can't talk about the thing in that specialty that doctors have. That's a terrible legal fallacy. But sometimes it makes sense, and our law, that's a built-up, colloquial thing that just recently started to happen, what I just said. Our law, structured by absolute geniuses, is meant to make sure that the things that England did, which is by sentencing people without any hardcore evidence, like physical evidence that can be proven without a shadow of a doubt, 9/10 of the law, if not more, is the basis of conviction. So you can charge somebody for anything, but you have to have evidence to actually, like, assert, yeah, that happened. And that's why people have to, if there's a serious crime that they're involved in, report to the police immediately. And I'm not giving out legal advice. I'm just saying, in order to get that in line, and if they do report to the police immediately and there's no evidence, then they're, that's not going to end up very well for them. But they'll be trusted less. They'll be the boy that cried wolf. And they could actually end up getting in trouble or countersued in civil court. But anyways, I'm getting a little off topic. It's strange that Ethan Klein's videos on this topic, which is a very big topic, have only gotten 1.3 million views because he has 5 million subscribers. Like, I don't even know what his politics are, but if you don't want to be turned on by your friends, don't code switch. Don't code switch. Don't start lying to people. That's embarrassing and will cause people to turn on you. Your identity isn't owed anything, but your consistency and how dependable you prove yourself to be allows people to feel safe linking and building. Imagine you have a worker. Your worker's been a good worker for 3 years, but he develops a heroin addiction. Are you gonna give that guy more than like a little bit of time to get his stuff together before you start looking at other options? Of course not, because you don't want a heroin addict working for you. I don't know what the politics are, but anybody hopping on this burning wagon of Israel defense in the current year of our Lord 2025 is asking for trouble. They're asking for trouble. It's not what you think it is. It's not worth it. You're being manipulated by these sources. And in the case of Ethan, like, he's directly plugged into these sources, but people didn't hate him for being a Jew, so they linked and built with him in the past. They've hated him for going to bat for Netanyahu and going to bat for, well, his wife going to bat for, like, Ben Gvir or something. And this evil, child-killing, murderous, genocidal, which is a word we're going to get into in a second, cabal, deliberately aligning yourselves with them at the worst possible time is going to have negative consequences for you and your friend circle. And, it just makes me think, like, I went to bat for things that I ended up being wrong at. I started to bleed heart a little bit on the kiwi farms, and I think that's where a lot of this started, because I was genuinely an enjoyable person to be around in a sense, and I got a little full of myself. I let it get to my head. I never had a position like that where I was plugged into so many different people through streaming. Like, I'd been watching Null's stream since the beginning, helping to build his chat into a fun place from the beginning, from like his first 10 streams or so. I was there. I don't think I was there like back when he was taking like Discord calls, but like after that, I was there from the very beginning, and for years before he even made an account. I was using this account to comment on Null's streams on his now banned account, and I remember when he got his YouTube banned. I was very, very sad, and I remember the last thing that he posted on his YouTube, which was this rousing speech about how he wants Keffals to live forever, in a ironic way. So, and it was a really rousing speech. He like played music in the background, and I felt so pumped. I was just like, yeah! I was so excited about that. And then things started to go downhill. I think he said the N-word on the stream or something, and didn't care. He read it out directly from his chat. And for a couple of pennies, he actually abandoned a lot more money down the line, because his YouTube donations were getting more money than his Rumble donations or his off-site direct donations. If I'm your accountant, I'm not going to recommend that sort of behavior. I stuck with him, and it fell apart eventually, but I think I'm partially to blame for that. I'd accept, if we were talking, I'd accept responsibility for turning kind of into a big-headed bleeding heart and combating people over minor issues that aren't really important, and sometimes I'm just in the wrong and I'm getting combative about it in the chat. I would say that is worthy of scorn, and I would lower my name on the tier list because of that behavior. Coming soon. Stay tuned. It's so hard because every time I go into a new section, I find new people that I remember seeing, and then I see people that are super active but have only been active since I left the site, and then I have to do research on them. I'm actually putting a lot of effort into it, so I hope I don't end up in like a technical roadblock where I can't upload all of the avatar squares into a tier list because there's just too many of them. I really hope. Then I'd have to make multiple episodes of it. It is what it is. Stay tuned. But back into this incredibly annoying story that I'm going to talk about once and I'm going to be done with permanently. I don't want to talk about iDubbbz or Hassan Piker or H3H3 again until they're like in the ground. I don't want to talk about them ever again. So another thing I saw on the forums, the amazing autism of the Kiwis has allowed them to trace the skull that H3H3 said he was sent. And they explained that the FBI wouldn't allow them to return the skull for money. That's a really funny little point there, that they had to get the money back immediately. Anyways. If the FBI was already involved, like H3H3 said that they were, and they also traced it back to the site that it was bought, they traced the exact skull based on the specific markings and like the ridges and stuff like that. They traced everything, and they know exactly, essentially where that skull is, even if it's off the website immediately. Like, they legitimately know. They have traced that stuff. They have traced the call, and it might be coming from inside the house. Now, let me explain. They've traced it to the site they were bought, and correlated recent collaborations with a macabre artist who is a big fan of taxidermy and bones and skulls and stuff. And it's horrifying to think how many Israelis probably have, like, Palestinian bones that they can work with or sell nowadays after this horrible thing that happened. But, this crisis, they call it a crisis. They think that Israel is, they've stopped calling it a crisis. They used to call it the Israel-Hamas war. Now they're calling it the Israel-Gaza crisis, or Israel-Palestine crisis. And yeah, that's a good sign that things are coming up Millhouse. Everything's coming up I can't even do this. Sorry. Sorry for trying. But that artist had recent skits. And some of the collaborative skits is likely where that exact skull came from. It might be a, "Hey, Rabbi, what you doing?" moment. If you don't know what that is, that's from the brilliant, absolutely stellar mind of Ben Garrison, the genius with the cartoon skits, political cartoon skits. He way back in the day. And Null's actually been in direct contact with this guy. He used to be warring with, like, 4chan and stuff like that. Until Null told him to chill, and that he should actually start talking to them and trying to reason with them instead of just fighting with them like Jordan Peterson does, Boomer style. And that ended up, like, really skyrocketing his career. It's a very fascinating little bit of history that not a lot of people probably know. And he made a cartoon back in the day, like probably before this, where he was he drew a rabbi in like a disguise coat, like trench coat with a thick hat, spray painting a swastika on the side of his temple. And the caption on the bottom as he's turning back, it says, "Hey, Rabbi, what you doing?" And I think it is also indicative of the strength of H3H3's argument when, like, the wailing about the swastika which is an actual swastika, but it might be reversed, but it actually traces back through the Bleach anime into a real swastika. Like, there's even a chapter in the Bleach manga called Swastika Explosion or something like that. On the samurai sword that iDubbbz flinging around like I did at the beginning of the content comp. That is a very, very weak argument. That is an incredibly weak argument. And although a lot of the stuff in the content comp was pretty weak, it was still visually and dictatively well put together and well structured, and more pleasant to look at than any of the H3H3 stuff, which is just like, don't you feel bad for me? People were mean to me. And it's just like, come on, man, are you really having your Christian moment in front of everybody over this? You don't know by now that you don't engage the trolls? You don't know that, my dude? Oh, broski. No! But at the end of the day, it just goes to show, it really, really just goes to show the entitlement, the victimhood of the Zionists has poisoned them. And that's why you see this kind of like imperial Japanese style going to war with all your neighbors for no reason, really. It's because you want to expand and steal this mentality that they've exercised in the Middle East. It's really, they're really overextended at this point, and they're really praying for America to come in there and start handling everything. They start the battles that America doesn't want to start, and then America helps clean them up after our media, which is being watched by less and less people every single year, consent into doing like the Iraq War. The Iraq War had like a 90+% consent rate. We were cheering. But you can only pull that stunt once in like a macro generation. You can't pull that every decade. You cannot pull that every decade. There are people alive now that have instilled the lessons that they learn through that into their children. And like, it's going to take another whole generation in order for them to forget that. So, never forget October 7th, where hummus entered the only LGBTQ democracy in the Middle East on flying carpets. Now, I actually watched a lot of footage from the very beginning of that. It's very likely that was ISIS, and the slaughter was very horrific. It was very nasty. Dreadhead, you know, lady getting killed was probably more of an accident than intentional. But I saw barracks with IDF that weren't able to get to their weapons in time, just filled with bodies. And, you know, it's... But one thing I never saw is I never saw any dead children. I never saw anybody being burned alive. That's something I never saw, and I don't even think they have the weapons to burn people alive. That's the thing, is like there's a lot of projection going on with the Israeli IDF actions being projected on Hamas. Because it's in their head, it's rattling around. Can we please stop pretending that everybody started hating Jewish people for no reason after that? If there was a Tibet-run genocide against the Nepalese, I would sympathize with the Nepalese, and I would revile the Tibetans. If there was a Japanese genocide on Pacific Islanders, I would revile the Japanese. I would, as I do revile the Imperial Japanese, one of the most evil militaries of all time, but not as evil as the IDF, even though they're more alike than they are different. There's also nuance in this general discussion that exists. A little bit, ones I just said are a little less nuanced, but there is nuance. What the media hive mind calls a genocide in Xinjiang near the Gobi Desert of the Uyghurs is still technically a genocide, as it will prevent their Muhammad-worshipping desert cult from maintaining cultural contiguity. But it has been handled with a soft touch, the education and opportunity, as opposed to white phosphorus raining down on Gazan children and the rampant bombing of everything. If it was like that to the Uyghurs, I would revile the Chinese. But for the most part, I don't, because I actually pay attention and I don't just scoop up whatever the news has handed to me in a sloppy way that day. Ukraine and Russia is probably the most complex argument around this issue. I originally took Ukraine's side, just as I originally took Israel's side after October 7th. I was a practicing Orthodox. I was, you know, really, like, I'd grown my beard out a lot, and I was constantly into it. I was practicing extreme asceticism and listening to Orthodox lessons and hymns basically all day. And this was after my dog died. So that, combined with the kind people on Kiwi Farms who I formed relationships and friendships with, that helps me a lot. That's one of the reasons why, like, Null did take pity on me, and that's why, is because he saw how much I was suffering when I first joined his website. Then I gave him $100 because I saw he was suffering in Siberia, and, you know, breaking out in hives and having his plumbing stop working and all that stuff. And I was so happy when he, you know, started farming and he was protecting baby pigeons, and that warmed my heart so much. It really, and like around that time, I felt, with the combination of Orthodoxy and the love that I felt from Kiwi Farms, I felt healing me. There was this golden light behind me, and like it really, when the negative events of 2023 happened, well into them, I felt this divine connection be severed, and I felt so dark and alone, and I gained a bunch of weight, like 20 pounds, and I was very, very depressed. I was laying in bed for like basically whole days at a time around that time. And I'm not just, it's, you know, it's, you go through these things, and it's just, I recognize why now. It's because they helped me, and I didn't do enough to like walk on my own without that crutch. They did a lot to help heal my heart after my childhood dog Coco died. Rest in peace. But, you know, let's get back into it. At the time that the Ukraine-Russia war popped off, it broke my heart, and I went on a big spiel about, you know, slaying the dragon and loving your brother. And I slowly actually stopped practicing Orthodoxy, because in a lot of the sectors that I was participating in through Orthodoxy, and this is part and parcel of being too online about it. Everybody doesn't like online converse because they're so flippant. But I saw so much violence, so much hatred, and that really hurt me. And you know what? I saw a ton of hatred coming out of Ukraine being directed at Russia. The same with the whole pig thing and all that. And like, what ultimately what Coach Red Pill got in trouble with is that particular form of aberrant, non-diplomatic hatred. That's not good. Hate creates more hate. Violence begets violence. You should know this. And rest in peace, Coach Red Pill, because he was probably tortured to death in a Ukrainian prison. It's terrible. It's awful. Just because probably somebody who tortured him probably saw that online, whether it was showed to them or not, and they got pissed off and they wanted to get even. Yep. You make me look bad. You know, it's bad. But originally I took Ukraine's side, but I didn't stay on Ukraine's side. The more I studied, the more people exposed themselves as time went on. It, you know, the more I saw Ukraine being infiltrated, used, and destroyed from the inside, that it was their own people, that the call was coming from the inside of the house, and that Russia was in many ways trying to liberate the third class citizens in the hinterlands that were just being extracted from. And I think I actually do believe Putin when he says he was denazifying the area, because think of the Azov battalions, and they crucified that guy and they smashed that guy's head with a hammer. Or was that? Pretty sure that was Ukraine. Regardless, they crucified that guy, and that's pretty crazy. And that's what we saw, right? So, like, the Azov battalion, and I don't like Nazis. Like, I'm sorry. I care about, you know, I care about Christendom. I do not want this occult-led, you know, special snowflake mentality and philosophy running out of hand and causing like a 50 front war. You know, I don't like it. Okay, I don't really sympathize with Nazis in many ways. So, Hamas isn't a terrorist group. Not by definition, especially because they're mostly fighting defensively. As I said, if they actually did that act, that particular sect of it would be terrorist, but I don't think that was Hamas. I think that was ISIS set up by the, you know, Khorasani, and, you know, where the opium trade over the last 25 years has bled into. which is ISIS itself. I'm pretty sure that was ISIS that paraglided in to Israel that day on October 7th. But what they are is hardline nationalists and inherent militants. That's the sort of political party that they are. And Benjamin Netanyahu ensured that they would be the governing body to enact his devious schemes. So I can sympathize with the Hamas hate, but the Israeli humpers saying that they don't believe your lying eyes, don't believe your lying eyes, they're insulting, and they're insulting to a lot of people. I'm not just saying that personally, I'm saying that generally, and I'm saying that accurately. Frankly, they're also psychotic, the way that they've been behaving. We all see it. It isn't just on TikTok, it's on Twitter too. It isn't just on Twitter, it's on Facebook. It's everywhere. And these people are like psychotic. I think a lot of them have the same problem Pakistanis have when they're so inbred that their IQs have been lowered, and now when you have actual operators risking themselves to get a war done, you have all these insane, chuds, all these insane, little gremlins running around screaming about turning Gaza into a parking lot and wanting to be bathed in the blood of the Hamas fighters. So, don't be surprised at the shifting opinions and morphing zeitgeist regarding Israel. And the people saying it's virtue signaling leftists are employing a false equivalence to strawman valid criticism. That's what it is. Genuinely. Sorry I went long on that, but let's get into higher gear for the second part of this episode. I don't understand how people can drink aspartame. That converts into formaldehyde in the blood. It's very, very bad. We used to call it, when I was a kid, blood alcohol. That's something that my dad called it, or alcohol sugar or something like that. It's really, really bad. And that's exactly what gives people blood cancer. They get, blood cancers, plasma cancers. Stay away from that poison. It is really, really poisonous. And you know what? I'd rather get shot with a hollow point that bores a cone-shaped chasm into my chest and has an exit wound the size of a softball than getting hit with a bunch of 9mm that bounce around inside of me, leaving burning shards of metal in me. Something that I remember, when I was going around the neighborhood asking people their opinions about the noise, I surveyed like 3/4 of the neighborhood. 90% of them were pissed. Pissed. Especially the new father of a 1-year-old living right next to the street in question. He was pissed. And I got a little petition together. Hey there, would you like to sign my petition? Tons of people signed it. And the house in question called the cops on me a few times. But every time I stayed respectful, I told the cops the one issue that I was addressing. I didn't get off topic, I didn't get spiteful. And it's not smart to talk to the cops. But the reason being is the people in the neighborhood had already apparently been reporting this for months with no recourse. I had waited 3 months to address this, 3 months on the dot from when I first started to notice that something was up. I had noticed it immediately, and then I waited to see if it would resolve itself, and it didn't. It seemingly only got worse, which is what happens when you allow cancers to fester. Like, it was real bad. It was really, really deliberate noise at 3 a.m., like deliberate revving and screeching, and not even racing, but like just trying to make as much noise as possible. Let's get into that a little bit, shall we? I think likely due to the friendly nature of the cop across the street, the reports in the neighborhood weren't being taken seriously. They were ignored, or there was a deeper issue there. I suspect there was real estate chicanery going on, that they were using the lame duck Biden and malignant DeSantis governance to sneak through the previous standards of public disturbances. I hadn't called the cops one time, but I ended up talking to like 20 of them from them being called on me. Not a single time was it well-founded, but for some reason these creeps, whenever I pressed them, kept on getting their way through the police department, and that is very suspicious since they were very new. One time I raised up a female cop by dunking on that neighborhood cop for trying to involve himself out of uniform in a conversation. And I knew exactly what I could do since he was out of uniform. And I dunked on him in a very charismatic and calm-headed way. And she giggled and looked down a little bit, blushed a little bit. She was kind of cute, I'm not gonna lie. I can tell that fat loser ain't much adored. But on to the point. The kid who snuck up on me and broke my ankle. He introduced himself to me as a rooster while I was collecting my signatures and stuff like that. I call him Chicken, but that's neither here nor there. He told me he was third shift. Stuck in my memory. I respect the hell out of third shift work. Every business in the area, save a couple of gas stations, stopped their third shifts around COVID and did not bring them back. And this was a year or two later. I think Chicken may have been a victim. I think he may have been put out of work. And that his particular set, probably set for a long time, set in stone, sleep schedule. That's... At the end of the day, when he broke my ankle, I did not press charges on him. Eventually, I'm pretty sure that was a big thing that actually got action in the neighborhood. I think the police do respect when people aren't just calling on them constantly, but instead actually want to take steps to make things better without getting courts and stuff like that involved. I think cops respect that a lot. And I get the distinct feeling that things are starkly different right now, so I don't want people to think that I just say that I helped my neighborhood. I really bled to help my neighborhood, Don't regret it. A lot of people misspell my name, my last name, Mathews, but the one T Mathews is uniquely American. There's a place called Mathews, Virginia, in Gloucester County, and it old school goes way, 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 way back. OG Americans, my dad's family, and I've known that. My mom came around the Irish diaspora time, but my dad's family has been here the entire time. And Gloucester indicates what we found out through the genetic testing, that he is very Welsh. Hope that Welsh girl on Kiwi Farms is doing good. She goes by Boo Woo or Sploo Gees or, whatever she is by now. I hope she's doing good, Maybe I'll look her up so I can put her on the tier list. S. Really, though, she is a wonderful person. She's very funny and very intelligent, and she's a pleasure to be around. Gonna do a little religion spurging, if you don't mind. So, we have soap and antibiotics and medical intervention and equipment now that greatly extends life. But that's not an excuse to neglect the same exercise and dieting practices our ancestors did for good health for thousands of years. In this way, does the truth of traditional Catholicism shine true. Christ has ransomed himself for mankind, yes, but unlike how many Protestants assume, you are not better off for abandoning practices. Many Lutherans and Anglicans didn't, but I've heard personally very passionate arguments for doing this. And after all I've studied, after walking the walk in all three forms of Christianity, I feel the same, well, not counting Coptic, of course, but that's tied deeply to ethnic roots. I feel the same way seeing that as I did when they were trying to roll out the fat acceptance models. Being fat doesn't mean you're bad, but it's not venerable. Iconoclasm doesn't mean you're bad. In fact, it can be very aesthetic, but that doesn't give you the right to destroy the beauty of the past for others. And I think Protestants can learn from this. Oh, one last thing. My dad's name is David, and the patron saint of Wales is Saint David. His cross is super cool. It's a black background on a yellow cross. It's black and yellow, baby. It's real cool. And he used to immerse himself in the water for long periods of time aesthetically. All right, this went real long. Good golly. Oh. All right, y'all.